Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about history, and we're going to talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife, and what an incredible model it sets for how to mix old versions and new versions, and how new versions are properly built on top of old versions, and how they're not, okay? So one, literally just got done watching Ghostbusters Afterlife. 5 out of 5 star movie. I was shocked how good it was. It was really spectacular. Just a wonderful, wonderful film. Spoilers for Ghostbusters Afterlife in this content. All right, so basically, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is the number one tabletop role-playing game in the world by far. Nothing even comes close. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is so powerful that Matthew Mercer, who is just Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adjacent, made $20 million. That's just by brushing your face on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? That's not even making Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition content. That's just like standing next to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. You could make $20 million, right? That is astounding. It's absolutely astounding, right? So basically, you have Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's the number one game in the world. I got a comment the other day, and they were like, nobody's contesting that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition isn't the number one game in the world. They're contesting it's the greatest game in the world, right? And so, actually, I agree with that commenter. No, everybody knows Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is the number one game in the world. What people contest constantly, you can't spin around on Twitter and throw a foam rock without hitting somebody in the face that's saying Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition doesn't deserve to be the number one game in the world, and that it's not the greatest tabletop role-playing game in the world, right? And so there's this contention, right, about Dungeons & Dragons' position on whether it deserves to be 5th edition, whether Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition deserves to be the number one game in the world, and that if it, and I hear some crazy comments. People are like, well, if it wasn't the number one, it wouldn't be the great. I'm like, it's hard to even understand what people are saying. Like, it is the greatest tabletop role-playing game in the world, and it's the number one tabletop role-playing game in the world, and there's a reason why, right? One of the reasons why is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition knows how to honor its past, and also knows how to move the ball forward and make the stories that are told in the new versions, the new editions. It knows how to honor its old editions, and at the same time, it knows how to make the new edition more exciting and better than the old edition, okay? So, and that's exactly what Ghostbusters Afterlife does. So, 2016 Ghostbusters, okay? Ghostbusters 2016. I think it was just called Ghostbusters, and it was 2016. So Ghostbusters 2016, right? They thought, the creators of that movie thought that the heart of Ghostbusters, the legacy of Ghostbusters, was putting Bill Murray in the movie not as a Ghostbuster, but as some other weird character, right? Like, just let's honor Bill Murray, but let's not honor Bill Murray's Ghostbuster character, right? And so Ghostbusters 2016 also thought, what's really going to make this movie special is Kate McKinnon saying snarky things to Melissa McCarthy. You're like, what? Like, really? Like, and so when you watch Ghostbusters Afterlife and then you watch Ghostbusters 2016, you're going to see that, like, one of these really has incredible honor and respect for Ghostbusters 1980, right? For the 1980s Ghostbuster 1 and Ghostbuster 2. And, and that's Ghostbusters Afterlife. All four of the original Ghostbusters, with one of them being dead, right, are in Ghostbusters Afterlife. And they arrived not as, like, weird, the actor playing some weird superfluous character, but they're in the movie, proton packs strapped to their backs, kicking electron streams and catching ghosts in ghost traps, right? Doing exactly what they were there to do, right? And that's what Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition does, right? It harkens back, the D20, the dice sets, the dice are exactly the same, right? The the books are the books are literally the same size, right? Like height and width, right? They're about double the pages of the old first edition, right? But they honor, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition honors Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition by making the books the same size, right? And, and Mordenkainen and, and Tasha and Fizban and Xanathar and all the old, Faerun and Greyhawk and, many of the old settings are right there, and they are carefully honored, right? They're not made fun of. They're not disrespected. They're not made to be superfluous. 5th edition knows its roots, right? And it plays it perfectly, honoring the old edition and then making itself better than the old editions, right? So let's talk about that, right? Advantage and disadvantage are brilliant. They are like probably the best idea in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And you're like, well, 2 dice, you roll 2 dice and keep your highest. You roll 2 dice and keep your lowest. You didn't come up with it. Or the reality is Dungeons & Dragons established it and made it matter and made it memorable and made it cool and put it in and made the game better, right? And the other thing that they did was they're like, hey, let's make it inclusive. Let's make it so that if you're not going to be punished if you want to run a female character, you're not going to be punished with a lower strength score, right? If you want to play a male character, you're not going to be punished with a lower intelligence score, right? So it made it better. It made it inclusive, right? And then if you look at Ghostbusters Afterlife, holy cows. There is a scene in Ghostbusters Afterlife where essentially Egon Spengler's grandson, a young kid from their school who does podcasts, right, and a young girl from and that's it. Those three, they catch a ghost on the run in the Ghostbusters car, right, with using the proton packs in a ejectable seat that slides out of the car, and the way they get the ghost trap under the ghost is they attach it to a high-end, fast-moving drone. That is super dope. That is as cool as it gets. And that ghost-busting scene was better than anything that ever appeared in Ghostbusters 1 or Ghostbusters 2. That's the advantage and the disadvantage role for 5e in Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters Afterlife comes and honors every single one of the actual original Ghostbusters, puts them in the film, makes them epic, and even honors the dead one, right? Like the person whose actor is literally dead is in the movie and is made to look baller and awesome and cool, right? But flat out, this isn't up for discussion. It has ghost-busting action in it that far surpasses anything in Ghostbusters 1 or Ghostbusters 2, right? So this is how it's done. And this is why Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is the number one role-playing game in the world and deserves to be the number one role-playing game in the world and is the greatest role-playing game in the world, okay? And that's the issue is they honor their past and they deliver with the now. And that's why Dungeons & Dragons is everything I just said. And I'm curious if you saw Ghostbusters Afterlife. And if you did, I'd love to know your thoughts on the film. And do you agree that the reason Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition really spikes over every indie game on the market is because it has the history, it honors the history, and it improves on the old editions and surpasses them, making it so that its number one position in the world is not only a fact, it is merited, earned. That's my opinion. I'll hear you. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.